I am Andrew Whitman, 38 years old, CEO of a private investment fund in Boston. My life revolves around numbers, high-stakes meetings, and decisions that can alter the fate of millions of dollars. But that day, a weekend morning in October, I decided to break the routine. I drove my sleek black Audi speeding along the highway toward Manhattan, my heart racing with excitement over the spontaneous idea for my younger sister, Lily. Today was her birthday, and I wanted to create a real surprise. No advance notice, no phone call, just showing up with a smile and a gift in hand. Lily has always been my little sister, even though she's now 32 and has her own life. We grew up in a wealthy family in Greenwich, Connecticut, where our parents taught us about responsibility and love. But Lily is different from me. She didn't pursue a career in finance like I did or like our father. She loves art, the paintings, the free brushstrokes that I've never fully understood. And I, with my packed schedule, hadn't seen her in 3 months. I told myself today would make up for it. On the passenger seat beside me was the gift I'd prepared for weeks. Not a Hermes bag or an expensive watch, the flashy things I knew Lily would hate. This was a professional art kit, including a high-end digital drawing tablet, a sensitive stylus pen, and an online course with the artist she'd admired since college. I remember clearly the moment Lily left home to chase her dreams in New York. She cried from fear, but her eyes sparkled with the excitement of someone stepping out of their comfort zone for the first time. "Andrew, I'm going to paint my own world," Lily said then, voice trembling but full of determination. This gift was my way of telling her that I still remembered, still followed her journey, and had never stopped supporting her. I'd spent hours researching online, calling art supply stores, even clumsily trying a few strokes myself just to ensure it truly fit the path my sister was on. Every time I imagined Lily opening the box, my heart warmed in a strange way. As if amid the bustling traffic and work pressures, I still kept a private corner just for family. As I turned into the Upper East Side neighborhood in Manhattan, the car clock showed 10 a.m. Lily's townhouse came into view. The house was a wedding gift from our family to Lily and Mark, her husband. It was a classic brownstone with large glass windows and a glossy black iron fence. I parked on the curb, turned off the engine, and picked up the birthday gift, my heart beating faster. I pictured Lily opening the door, eyes wide in surprise, then hugging me tightly. But as I approached the gate, I noticed everything was unusually silent. The iron gate was locked tight, curtains drawn completely shut, not a sound from inside. No sign of Lily's or Mark's car in the garage. I frowned, telling myself they might have gone out early. Lily likes weekend shopping or perhaps meeting friends at her favorite cafe. I decided not to call right away, wanting to keep the surprise intact. I sat back in the car, rolled down the window to breathe in the New York air, a mix of exhaust, toasted bread from a nearby shop, and honking horns. Time passed slowly. I checked work emails, replied to a few messages, but my mind kept drifting to Lily. By 11 a.m., sunlight streamed directly through the windshield, making me hot. I stepped out, walked around the block, hoping to see Lily returning with arms full of bags. But nothing. The house remained dead silent, like an abandoned castle in the midst of the vibrant city. A sense of unease began to creep in. Lily isn't the type to be away from home for long, especially on weekends. She always stays in touch with family, a rule from childhood after our mother nearly had an accident and taught us to always check in. I reassured myself. Maybe her phone battery died, or she was in a spot with poor signal. But the bad feeling grew like a dark cloud blocking the sun. I remembered when Lily was sick in college. I'd driven through the night from Boston just to bring her soup. Now sitting here waiting, I felt like a useless brother. By noon, the sun was harsher, sweat beading on my forehead. I couldn't take it anymore. Hands trembling, I dialed Lily's number. It rang long, no answer. I called again, second time, third time. My heart pounded, each ring like a countdown to something terrible. "Lily, where are you? Answer me," I whispered to the screen. Still silence. This rarely happened. Lily always picked up, even if just to say, "I'm busy, I'll call back, bro." The bad feeling turned into real fear. I imagined all sorts of things, robbed or suddenly ill. I called a fourth time, gripping the phone until my knuckles whitened, and then I called once more. It rang a few times, and an unfamiliar voice answered. "Hello, this is Lenox Hill Hospital. I'm Nurse Sarah. Who's calling?" Her voice was professional but firm, as if accustomed to emergency calls. My heart stopped. Hospital. Lily? I'm Andrew Whitman, Lily Whitman's brother. Why is my sister's phone at the hospital? My voice cracked, trying to stay calm but failing. Nurse Sarah paused for a moment, then spoke slowly. "Mr. Whitman, your sister was admitted for emergency treatment a few days ago due to a traffic accident. She's currently in critical condition in the intensive care unit. You should come immediately." The world around me collapsed. I was stunned, the gift still clutched in my hand, the shiny wrapping paper glinting mockingly under the sun. Traffic accident? Critical condition? Lily fighting for her life in the hospital, while I, the brother who thought he protected her, was sitting here waiting to surprise her. Guilt surged like a tidal wave, drowning me. I tossed the gift onto the back seat, started the engine, and sped off, flooring the accelerator so hard the tires screeched on the pavement. Lenox Hill Hospital was only a few blocks away, but at that moment the distance felt like an ocean. My heart pounded erratically, breaths coming in gasps, the steering wheel slippery from sweat. On the road I weaved through traffic, horns blaring around me like the screams in my head. When I reached the hospital, I parked haphazardly in the emergency lot, ignoring the no parking signs. I rushed into the main lobby, the sharp smell of disinfectant hitting me like a punch, making me dizzy. The reception desk was crowded, but I pushed forward, voice trembling. "Lily Whitman, where is my sister right now?" The receptionist looked at me, eyes full of sympathy. That look I hated because it confirmed everything was terrible. I showed my ID, explaining hastily about the call from Nurse Sarah. She nodded, made a confirmation call, and a young medical staff member led me through the long, echoing hallway. Each step felt heavy, my shoes echoing like my heartbeat. "She's in the intensive care unit," he said, voice flat as if reading from a script. I nodded, but my mind was blank. Images of Lily beaming on her wedding day flooded back. She in her white dress, holding a bouquet of roses, and me standing beside her, proud but worried about Mark. "I'll be happy, bro," she had said. And now? I'd left her alone for too long. At the ICU door, I froze as if turned to ice. Through the thick glass, Lily lay motionless on the bed, body connected to countless tubes and wires, the ventilator rhythmically inflating her chest, and the vital signs monitor beeping steadily like a reminder from death. My sister's face was pale, her long hair disheveled, bruises mottling her arms. This wasn't Lily, not the sister who always smiled, who painted vibrant, colorful pictures. This was a living corpse, dependent on machines. My heart twisted, tears streaming down my face. I leaned against the wall to keep from collapsing. Nurse Sarah, the one who had called me, stepped out, gently touching my shoulder. "You're her brother?" We tried contacting her husband, but... I nodded, interrupting, voice hoarse. "I know. Let me see my sister." She led me through the protocol, requiring a mask and hand washing. Every action felt mechanical while my head was empty. I sat by the bed, taking Lily's hand, ice cold, limp, no response. A few minutes later, I sought out the attending doctor. I couldn't just sit there. I needed the truth, needed to control something in this chaos. The doctor was a middle-aged man with thick glasses, voice calm to the point of coldness. I confirmed I was immediate family, her blood brother, and he nodded, leading me to a private room. "Ms. Whitman has passed the initial critical phase after the accident," he began, flipping through the chart. "Her car collided with a truck, likely due to loss of control. We performed emergency surgery to stop internal bleeding." I nodded, trying to follow, but then he continued. "However, she remains in a deep coma with multiple organ failure. Liver, kidneys, lungs all affected. Her condition could worsen at any time. We're monitoring closely, but you should prepare yourself." Those words exploded in my head like bombs. My ears rang. The medical terms, deep coma, multiple organ failure, becoming fragmented, meaningless. They floated like fog, ungraspable. Fear and helplessness overwhelmed my usual logical thinking. The thoughts of strategy, risk, profit. I, who always controlled everything in boardrooms, was now powerless over my sister's life. "Doctor, do you know when she'll wake up?" I asked, voice breaking. The doctor shook his head. "We can't say for sure. We're doing everything we can." I left his room with legs like lead, mind reeling. How could this happen? Lily was a good driver, careful. Something wasn't right. After a few minutes composing myself in the hallway, deep breaths, wiping tears, I returned to the ICU. I observed around other patients, machine beeps, antiseptic smell. And then I realized something. Lily's husband was nowhere to be seen. Mark Collins, the handsome husband who called himself a businessman, wasn't here. I asked Nurse Sarah, trying to keep my voice steady. "Has my sister's husband, Mark, been here?" She shook her head, eyes full of regret. "He hasn't shown up, sir. We've called multiple times since the first day, but no answer. His number was the emergency contact, but it was useless." Anger flared like fire. Where was Mark right now? What was he doing while my sister lay here fighting for her life? I remembered the wedding day. He grinning widely, hugging Lily, but eyes always shifting when I asked about his work. "I love him, Andrew," Lily had said. And now? I pulled out my phone, dialing Mark repeatedly. It rang and rang, no pickup. Second time, third time, still silence. I gripped the phone tightly. Was he avoiding it, or doing something worse? As I was about to call again, my phone vibrated, a social media notification on the lock screen. It was from the X app, a comment on Mark's post. I tapped it instinctively, hands shaking. The screen lit up, and the photo that appeared left me stunned. Mark was partying, reveling with his family on a luxury yacht, champagne, laughter, endless blue sea. He wore a white t-shirt, sunglasses, arm around a strange woman. And then I realized it was the very yacht our family had gifted Lily 5 years ago as part of the wedding gift and assurance for her future. The boat's name was Sea Breeze, chosen by Lily herself because she loved the ocean. Now he was using it to party while his wife was in the hospital. Rage surged like a tidal wave. I wanted to smash the screen, wanted to go find him. But I held back, breathing deeply. The unease grew clearer, as if a puzzle piece was misplaced that I hadn't seen yet. This accident, was it random? Mark not showing up, not answering, and now living it up. Something rotten here. Without hesitation, I called the family's private investigator, Jack Harlan, a former cop who'd worked for us for years. "Jack, it's Andrew Whitman. I need you to quietly investigate my sister's marriage and this accident. Focus on her husband, Mark Collins. Leave nothing out. Finances, history, everything." He asked for details, and I summarized briefly, voice restrained. "And don't tell my parents yet. I don't want them worried while things are still unclear. Make it quick." He agreed, and I hung up, feeling like I'd just dropped a bomb. I returned to Lily's side, holding her hand. "I'll find the truth, little sister. I promise." But in my head, a storm was brewing. What was Mark hiding? And Lily, did you know? Fear mixed with anger kept me awake that night, sitting by the bed waiting for news from Jack. This was no longer just an accident, it was a dark secret, and I would turn it inside out. The days that followed passed like a prolonged nightmare with no end in sight. I practically lived in the hospital, turning it into my temporary home. Early mornings I woke with dark circles under my eyes, splashed water on my face in the public restroom, then rushed to the ICU to relieve the nurses and monitor Lily's condition. I learned to read the curves on the vital signs monitor. Her heartbeat steady but weak, blood pressure fluctuating like a silent warning. Every time an alarm beeped, my heart clenched as if the world had stopped turning. I sat there for hours, wiping sweat from Lily's forehead, whispering old childhood stories in the hope she could hear. I remembered the time we sneaked out to the park without telling our parents. Lily fell and burst into tears, and I carried her all the way home on my back. Now I wanted to hold my sister, but she lay motionless, dependent on the ventilator and tubes. My sleep came in fits on the hard waiting room chairs in the hallway, where nurses' footsteps and machine hums echoed like a hellish symphony. Each time I dozed off, I jolted awake from nightmares. Lily vanishing, Mark smirking on the yacht. The waiting felt exhausting, like a taut string about to snap. Work in Boston was neglected. I canceled meetings, delegated to my assistant, but it didn't matter. Lily was everything. On the afternoon of the fourth day, Mark finally showed up. I was sitting by Lily's bed, holding her hand and praying silently when the ICU door opened. He entered in a hurry, shirt wrinkled as if he'd run a marathon, hair disheveled. His eyes fixed on Lily, and then he broke down, tears streaming down his face, shoulders shaking. It was belated grief, like a hastily staged play. I stood up, heart pounding, but said nothing. Mark knelt by the bed, taking Lily's hand, the hand I'd held for days, and whispered, "Honey, I'm here now. I'm sorry I was late." His voice broke, sounding so genuine that if I hadn't known about the yacht, I might have believed it. But I knew. I stood there, observing every gesture, feeling like I was watching a predator pretending to be vulnerable. Mark turned to me, wiping tears with his sleeve, voice trembling. "Andrew, I'm sorry for not being here sooner. There was an urgent issue at the company. I had to go to California. But I've been praying for Lily every day. I believe she'll be okay. She's strong, you know." He spoke as if pitching to a board, eyes looking at me hopefully. "She's everything to me, Andrew. I can't imagine losing her." I didn't respond, just stood silently without showing any reaction. My face was stone, but inside anger boiled. Urgent issue, project, while his wife lay critically ill? And praying? Did he think I was that stupid? I remembered the ex photo, him grinning with champagne, not a trace of worry. But I stayed silent, letting him expose himself. As I watched, I noticed Mark's expression lacked the panic or shock typical when a loved one is fighting for life. No bloodshot eyes from sleeplessness, no trembling hands from fear. Everything seemed anticipated, like a carefully calculated plan. He cried, but the tears dried quickly, and when he turned away, I caught the corner of his mouth twitching upward as if relieved the performance was over. He thanked me again for staying to care for his wife, patting my shoulder like a friend. "Thank you, Andrew. You're a great brother." I remained silent, just nodding coldly. Inside, I wanted to grab his collar and yell, "What are you hiding? Why weren't you here from the start?" But no, I held back. I needed evidence, not confrontation. Mark stayed a few more minutes, stroking Lily's hair, then checked his watch. "I have to go now. Urgent meeting. I'll be back soon. Take care of Lily for me, okay?" And he left, leaving behind the scent of cheap cologne mixed with sweat. In the days after, Mark only appeared sporadically at the hospital, each visit very brief. He arrived unexpectedly, stood by Lily's bed for a few minutes, leaned down to whisper the same hollow words like, "Hang in there, honey," then quickly left. "My project is at a critical stage," he said during one visit, voice lowering, eyes avoiding mine. "But I'm always thinking of Lily." I didn't probe, didn't expose him. I didn't mention the yacht, the unanswered calls. I just silently observed, letting his haste and empty words reveal everything. I pretended to suspect nothing, smiling politely when he greeted me. But all my attention focused on tracking every small change in Lily's condition. Each morning I asked the doctor, "How is my sister? Any progress?" He shook his head. "Your sister is stable, but no signs of waking yet." I sat there, noting everything: heart rate, blood pressure, medication doses, like an investor analyzing stock charts. But this wasn't money, it was my sister's life. Late at night, when the hospital was quiet, I thought about Mark. What was he doing now? Partying again? Or worried about me? The tension built, exhausting me, but I couldn't stop. Lily needed me alert. A few days later, on a rainy evening with torrents pounding the hospital windows, investigator Jack contacted me. My phone vibrated in my pocket and I rushed to the hallway to answer. "Andrew, I have the initial report," he said, voice low. Sent via encrypted email. Read it, but brace yourself. I opened my laptop right there on the waiting chair, hands shaking as I entered the password. The report appeared, detailed cold like a financial statement. And what I read made the world collapse again. The report showed Mark had exploited Lily and the marriage to access our family's finances, using the money for uncontrolled personal purposes. He wasn't the successful entrepreneur he claimed, he was an opportunist. From the wedding day, he'd persuaded Lily to sign documents, transferring funds from the family trust to joint accounts, then using them for risky investments. But it didn't stop there. Mark had a history of gambling addiction, records from Atlantic City casinos, losses in the hundreds of thousands. He used stimulants, cocaine, and synthetic drugs, with receipts from black market sources. And worst, involvement in cryptocurrency investments with severe losses, millions evaporated in scam exchanges. Currently, Mark had borrowed nearly $5 million from banks, with collateral being the Manhattan townhouse and the Yacht Sea Breeze, assets titled in Lily's name, gifted by the Whitman family at the wedding 5 years ago. I sat frozen under the flickering neon lights, gripping the laptop tightly. How could this be? The townhouse in Manhattan, the Yacht Sea Breeze, the gifts we gave to secure Lily's future, now tools for his debts? The report included photos of documents, Lily's signatures, likely coerced or deceived. I remembered the wedding day, my father patting Mark's shoulder. "Take care of my daughter." He smiled. "Of course, Dad." Now it was clear. The marriage Lily defended at all costs was just a tool for Mark to drain and drag her into a dangerous spiral our family never knew about. Lily had once said, "Mark's making big investments, bro. We'll be rich." I'd smiled, thinking it normal. Now I felt like a fool. Tears streamed down, but not from sadness, from anger. Angry at Mark, angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. "Lily, what have you endured?" I whispered, returning to the ICU. She still lay there, motionless, but now I knew this accident was likely connected to him. The storm in my head turned into a whirlwind. Mark wasn't a husband, he was a con man. And I would make him pay. I no longer saw what was happening as mere subjective feelings or personal suspicions. This was clear evidence, like glaring red numbers on a balance sheet warning of bankruptcy. Jack's report was no joke. It was black and white proof of a rotten marriage where Lily had been exploited like a pawn to be sacrificed. I sat by my sister's bed watching the steady but feeble waves on the vital signs monitor, the monotonous beeps echoing in the stark white room. The initial helplessness gradually subsided, giving way to the cold clarity I was all too familiar with from work. I wouldn't let him continue like this. I stepped out into the hallway, pulled out my phone, and called Jack. My voice low, no need for long explanations. "Dig deeper for me. Cash flows, loans, Mark's transaction history. Everything. I need the full picture, no details missed." After hanging up, I returned to the room, taking Lily's hand once more. If this was a game Mark thought he could evade, from this moment I had decided to drag him into the light step by step, without haste, but without mercy. He agreed, promising updates in a few days. Meanwhile, I quickly printed the preliminary report, stuffed it into my briefcase, and rushed to the parking lot. Lenox Hill Hospital now felt like a prison, and I needed outside air to breathe. I sped toward Greenwich, Connecticut, our parents' home, where we grew up. The I-95 highway was congested, but I weaved recklessly, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Each mile brought memories. Little Lily running in the garden, Dad teaching me about investments, Mom hugging us every night. Now I had to shatter that piece to save my sister. My sudden appearance stunned my parents. I parked in front of the garage, entered without knocking, a childhood habit. Dad Richard was reading the newspaper in the living room. Mom Eleanor was making tea in the kitchen. They looked at me, and just seeing my tense face, red eyes, they knew something major had happened. "Andrew, what's wrong?" Mom asked, voice trembling, dropping the stirring spoon. Dad stood, removing his glasses, face grave. "Tell us, son." What's going on? The home's atmosphere, scent of toasted bread and fresh flowers, suddenly turned heavy as lead. I sat on the familiar leather sofa, hands shaking as I opened the briefcase. No beating around the bush, I couldn't. Lily had an accident. She's in emergency at a Manhattan hospital. Still in a deep coma with multiple organ failure. Her condition could worsen at any time. The words poured out like a dam breaking, and I felt my face flush. The news left my parents stunned for seconds, speechless. Mom stood frozen, hand over her mouth, then burst into sobs, tears streaming. How could this happen to her? She rushed to hug me, shoulders shaking. Dad was silent for a long time, face ashen, fists clenched on the chair arms until knuckles whitened. He was a strong man who built a financial empire from nothing, but now he looked older than ever. How did the accident happen? When? He asked, voice hoarse, trying to compose himself. I summarized briefly. The nurse's call, Lily in the ICU, Mark's absence. They listened, Mom still crying, Dad nodding slowly. When the air calmed, only Mom's sobs and the ticking clock remained. I placed the investigation documents on the coffee table. Sheets printed with dense figures, receipts, transaction histories. But that's not all. Mark has a dirty record. I hired an investigator, and this is what he found. I summarized what I knew about Mark: mounting debts, gambling and drug addiction, heavy cryptocurrency losses. He'd exploited the marriage to access our family assets, the house, the yacht, even Lily's savings. He's borrowed $5 million, collateralized with the very gifts we gave. And Lily probably didn't know. My voice cracked, but I stayed calm. My parents listened, faces changing color. Anger erupted like fire meeting wind. Mom wiped tears, voice shrill. That bastard. I'll call the police right now, expose everything. How dare he? Dad slammed the table. Exactly. We won't let this slide. I'll hire the best lawyers, strip him bare. The living room air turned into a war room, tense to the point of suffocation. But I raised my hand, voice firm. Please calm down. Acting impulsively against him now would be a mistake. Mark could dissipate assets, whitewash everything if he knows we're onto him. Every move must be swift, clean, and legal. No room for him to counterattack. We sat there, planning meticulously under the warm living room lights. Mom made coffee, trying to stay calm while Dad flipped through the report, eyes flashing with calculation. Just like me in boardrooms. We agreed on the plan. Approach the banks to buy out all of Mark's debt, thereby becoming the new legitimate creditor. That way we control him, I said. No direct confrontation, but he'll lose everything. Dad nodded slowly. Your idea makes sense. I have connections at the bank. We'll use an intermediary entity to stay anonymous. Mom looked at me, voice full of worry. But what about Lily? When she wakes up? I hugged her, speaking softly but firmly. We're doing this for her. To protect her. The discussion lasted into the night. We went step by step. Who contacts whom? Timelines, potential risks, and contingencies if things didn't go as planned. Sitting in that room, I felt like I was planning the biggest deal of my life. But this time, what was on the table wasn't money. It was justice for my sister. The procedures moved urgently but discreetly. The next morning, I returned to the hospital to check on Lily. Condition unchanged, still deep coma. Then called the family lawyer. Dad contacted the bank through a subsidiary, an anonymous intermediary entity to avoid exposure. We transferred funds quickly, acquiring the $5 million debt with interest. A cold deal like any on Wall Street. Jack sent more reports. Mark's cash flows into casinos, offshore accounts, even cocaine purchase receipts. My heart raced, everything fit. 3 days later, paperwork complete. Creditor rights transferred quietly, no prior notice to Mark. And then, the Manhattan townhouse and Yacht Sea Breeze titled in Lily's name were immediately seized per collateral terms. Everything cold and non-negotiable. The lawyer emailed Mark, assets foreclosed due to contract breach. I imagined his face paling as he read it. Per the agreed plan, I had Dad directly contact the bank. As head of the entity now holding the debt and controlling accounts in Lily's name, Dad requested freezing all secondary cards and credit limits Mark was using. Everything proceeded swiftly and by the book. The bank confirmed the request valid and executed immediately. From that moment, the money flow Mark relied on for his lavish lifestyle, parties, yachting, first-class flights, was completely cut off. I knew he would panic. And sure enough, hours later, the family lawyer forwarded recordings of Mark's frantic calls to the bank. "What's going on? This must be a mistake," his voice cracked in panic. "I need to speak to the bank manager. That's my wife's property." But no one reversed it. Everything legal, clear, no loopholes for argument. Layer by layer, his facade began to crack. He panicked, realizing what he'd relied on, the Whitman family money, the borrowed prestige from Lily's name, was crumbling beyond his control. As for me, after temporarily resolving all the financial matters through phone calls and lawyers, I returned to the ICU area with a heavy heart, as if a boulder were pressing on my chest. I walked slowly down the hospital hallway, my shoes echoing dryly in the cold space. The debt figures and the newly seized assets were just the first step. I knew the real nightmare was still ahead. And Lily, my sister, still lay motionless behind the ICU door, connected to machines, a painful reminder that no matter how much I controlled outside, here I remained powerless before the fragile line between her life and death. Nurse Sarah greeted me with her familiar weary smile. "Her condition is more stable today, Mr. Andrew. No worsening signs." I nodded in thanks but didn't linger. I sought out Lily's primary doctor, Dr. David Harlan, a middle-aged man with thick glasses and a voice so calm it sometimes irritated me, as if he were too detached from my fear. I knocked on his office door, voice urgent. "Dr. Harlan, I need more details about my sister's condition." He nodded, invited me in, and closed the door. The room felt stifling, with stacked medical files on the desk and the smell of cold coffee. In that office, Dr. Harlan flipped through Lily's chart, his eyes scanning the dense pages of data. "Mr. Whitman, we've discussed it briefly, but if you want details..." He paused, sighing lightly. "When Lily was brought in critically, initial blood tests showed some abnormal indicators." My heart beat faster, sensing something worse. He continued, voice steady but meaningful. "From the medical analysis, Lily showed signs of severe hypoglycemia just before the accident. Blood sugar levels dangerously low, leading to dizziness, loss of focus, likely the cause of her losing control of the vehicle." I frowned, trying to follow. Lily didn't have diabetes. She was healthy, ate regularly. "That doesn't match her physical condition or medical history," he confirmed, as if reading my mind. "She has no related conditions." The doctor explained further that Lily's insulin levels at admission were not consistent with natural physiological response. Insulin abnormally elevated, as if her body was forced into sudden hypoglycemia. This suggests possible external intervention. His words exploded like a time bomb in my head. External intervention? He cautiously said that medically they couldn't rule out the elevated insulin coming from a non-natural source into Lily's body, though more time and evidence were needed for confirmation. "It could be from medication, injection, or even mixed into food. We've reported it to authorities, but no official conclusion yet." I sat frozen, feeling blood turn to ice. In my mind, Mark's image flashed, the only person close enough to Lily to know her daily routines intimately. I remembered him once saying to me, tone light and reassuring at the time, "Lily's been weak lately. I'm taking care of her, don't worry, Andrew." Back then, I'd believed it. Now those words replayed in a completely different light. If nothing was random, what had Mark really been doing to my sister all that time? I left the doctor's office breathing rapidly, emotions chaotic like a storm. I tried to stay calm, walking slowly through the hallway, but couldn't shake the rising unease like a tidal wave. My hands clenched into fists, cold sweat breaking out despite the cool hospital air. This was no random accident. This was a crime. Mark, had he injected insulin into Lily? To cover debts? To seize assets? The thought made me want to vomit. I stopped by a window looking out at bustling Manhattan streets below, but everything blurred. Old memories flooded back like faded film reels running in reverse. The day Lily first introduced Mark to the family at dinner in Greenwich. She entered the house, eyes shining, holding his hand, voice excited. "Everyone, this is my boyfriend, Mark. He's wonderful." Mark grinned widely, shaking my hand firmly but eyes shifting away. I'd felt something off from that very moment. He asked too much about my work, about the Whitman family. I recalled the times my parents and I openly warned her. "Sweetie, Dad thinks Mark seems unstable. What exactly is his job?" Dad asked Lily once, voice concerned. Mom was gentler. "Darling, I just want you happy, but be sure." But Lily brushed it all off with blind trust and desire to protect her marriage. "Don't worry, Mom and Dad, Mark's great. He's just starting his business." She said it, eyes sparkling as if Mark were a fairy tale prince. "Lily, I feel he's not decent. Listen to me." But she cried, "Don't interfere in my life. I love him." And I'd gone silent, not wanting to lose my sister. And now, I remembered Lily resolutely entering the marriage despite growing family concerns. On the wedding day, she in white, beaming, but I saw fleeting worry in her eyes as Mark signed property papers. "Are you sure about this?" I'd whispered. "Yes, bro. This is my future." Anger surged as I thought of all that had been hidden, intertwined with regret for not being firmer and not being there for her more. I wondered why I'd let work consume me, why weekly rushed calls replaced real visits, why I hadn't forced Lily to tell everything from the start. I blamed myself, lightly punching the cold hospital hallway wall, pain shooting from my fist, but nothing compared to the aching inside. In the chilly hospital hallway with distant machine hums echoing, I understood what was happening wasn't random coincidence. Accident, deaths, abnormal insulin, all linked to Mark. From that moment, I knew I couldn't turn back or ignore it anymore. I had to act, dig deeper. I could no longer wait after what I had learned. Rage boiled inside me like an unquenchable fire, and the thought of Mark, the man who might have deliberately harmed my sister, made it impossible for me to sit still. I left the hospital immediately after one final check on Lily. She still lay there, motionless, the ventilator rhythmically inflating her chest, a silent reminder that time was running out. I rushed to the parking lot, started the Audi, and sped off recklessly toward the temporary apartment Jack had traced as Mark's address. He was no longer in the townhouse, the assets had been seized, and was hiding in a cheap apartment complex on the outskirts of Manhattan. New York's streets were congested, horns blaring, but I didn't care. My heart pounded, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. When I arrived, dusk had fallen, the yellowish streetlights casting a dim glow on the rundown building with its peeling walls. I parked hastily, took the foul-smelling elevator, filled with determination to force everything into the open. Mark's door was on the 5th floor, apartment 512. I knocked hard, the bangs echoing in the quiet hallway. There was movement inside, then the door opened. Mark stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He looked a decade older than at our last hospital encounter. The moment he saw me with my tense expression, a flash of panic crossed his face. His eyes darted for a split second like a cornered animal, before he quickly regained his familiar composure. "Andrew? Why are you here? Is something wrong with Lily?" he asked, voice trying to stay steady, but I saw his hand gripping the doorframe, lightly trembling. I didn't beat around the bush, pushing the door open and stepping in without invitation, voice cold and resolute, unable to hide the anger. "You know exactly why I'm here, Mark. Let's cut the act. Tell me straight, were you involved in what happened to Lily? Don't pretend anymore. Assets seized, mounting debts, then this accident. You think I'm stupid enough not to connect the dots?" His apartment was a mess. Belongings piled up, empty liquor bottles rolling on the floor, the stench of cigarette smoke mixed with sweat. He closed the door, face paling but forcing a smile. "Andrew, calm down. You're letting emotions take over because of Lily's coma." I get it, but don't throw around accusations. I love my wife. Why would I harm her? He deflected, voice artificially sweet, like pitching a bad deal to investors. I stepped closer, lowering my voice, but each word cold and heavy. You love my sister? Or do you love our family's money? 5 million in debt, gambling, cocaine. You needed Lily not as a wife, but as a wallet. Mark backed up, trying to stay balanced, voice rising. You're insulting me. I'm her husband. I was with Lily because I love her. I let out a short, joyless laugh. Love her by mortgaging her assets? Love her by using her as a shield for your debts? I paused for a beat, staring straight at him, words slow but weighty. And right after that, Lily has an accident. Just when you're drowning in debt. You don't see how obvious the timing is? Mark clenched his jaw, eyes flickering. He retreated half a step, then snapped back, voice louder as if reassuring himself. Accidents happen. Traffic on the road, no one can predict it. I'm heartbroken, Andrew. I've prayed for Lily every day. I stared at him without blinking. Praying for her to live or praying for you to get away with it? Mark froze for a single breath. I continued, voice unchanged. The doctor mentioned abnormal insulin levels in Lily's blood. His face changed completely. He repeated, voice unnaturally high. Insulin in Lily's blood? I don't know what you're talking about. Lily doesn't have diabetes. I didn't look away. That's exactly why it's abnormal. And you know that. He shook his head repeatedly, voice hurried. Medical mistake. Doctors overinterpret. I'm not involved at all. I stepped even closer, close enough he couldn't avoid my eyes. You're the only one who knew Lily's daily routines. What she ate, drank, any medication. You called it caring. I call it control. My voice began to shake from pent-up rage. You think just because there's no syringe in your hand, you're innocent? You think I don't understand how you staged an accident? I'll keep gathering evidence, and I won't hesitate to take this to court if needed. You'll go to prison for what you've done. Mark jumped up, laughing loudly, the dry, hollow sound echoing in the cramped room. Court? With what? Your guesses? It's still just an accident. No direct evidence, Andrew. My lawyers will tear it all apart. He leaned in, voice full of challenge. You can't do anything to me. What you have, debts, reports, isn't enough in court. My lawyers will shred it. You're just torturing yourself. I looked straight at him, voice slow and icy. Not yet, but there will be. And when there is, you'll wish today I'd just beaten you instead of letting you keep talking. I stood there, rage bottled up to the point of wanting to punch him, but I held back. My mind became clearer than ever because I understood that from this moment things would no longer be settled with words. He was partly right. I needed solid evidence, not empty talk. I left with rage suppressed to the point it didn't need to explode. No shouting, no turning back, just heavy but resolute steps. Strangely, the farther I got, the clearer my mind became. Every piece began falling into place coldly and precisely. I understood that from this moment, explanations or promises had become meaningless. What was coming would no longer be decided by words but by actions, and this time, I would not allow myself to hesitate. On the way back to the hospital, I immediately called the family's private lawyer, Mr. Thomas Riley, a veteran criminal attorney in Boston who had helped us through several financial litigations before. I have the full file on Mark Collins, debts, addictions, and now suspicion of intentionally harming my sister. I need you to file immediately and bring everything to court properly. My voice was strangely calm, even though my heart was still pounding. Mr. Riley was silent for a moment, then said, Send everything to me. But Andrew, you know, circumstantial evidence isn't enough. We need to be certain. I knew, but I couldn't wait any longer. I sent the entire collected dossier, Jack's report, Mark's computer search history, insulin purchase receipts Jack had just dug up from his black market accounts, bank statements. It was all like a ticking bomb, and I would detonate it in court. The following days were an administrative nightmare. Mr. Riley worked quickly, filing charges against Mark for financial fraud, abuse, and suspected intentional harm leading to the accident. The court accepted it, and involved parties were summoned one by one for depositions. First was Dr. Harlan. He sat in the deposition room, voice steady as he described the abnormal insulin levels and unnatural hypoglycemia. From a medical standpoint, there are signs of external intervention, he said, and I saw a glimmer of hope. Then Nurse Sarah, confirming Mark never visited the hospital or answered calls. Financial-related witnesses, bank staff, investigator Jack were also called. Jack presented his detailed report, voice professional. Mr. Collins mortgaged assets in his wife's name for loans, and transaction history shows cash flows into gambling and stimulants. I sat there listening, heart racing with anticipation. And Mark? He was summoned last, appearing with his own lawyer, a man named Victor Lang, famously sharp, with a track record of winning big cases. I watched him through the interview room glass, his face composed but eyes evasive. The preliminary hearings proceeded rapidly, intense like a storm. We met in a local Manhattan courthouse, the room packed with the smell of old paper and murmurs from spectators. Mr. Riley had warned me, "Andrew, the law needs direct evidence. Speculation can be dismissed." But I hadn't expected things to veer off course so quickly. Mark's side hired Victor Lang, a tall, silver-haired lawyer with a thunderous voice and razor-sharp questions. From the first session, Lang counterattacked fiercely. When Mr. Riley presented the debts, Lang interrupted. "Your Honor, this is mere financial speculation. Mr. Collins borrowed legally, and there's no direct evidence linking it to the accident." I moved to exclude this portion for lack of causation. The judge nodded, taking notes. I sat in the back row, fists clenched, feeling the ground crumbling beneath me. Mark's lawyer relentlessly dismissed each suspicion, aggressively attacking the speculative nature of the arguments. Circumstantial evidence? Computer search history? Anyone can search anything online, Your Honor. No fingerprints, no video, no direct witness seeing Mr. Collins inject insulin. He moved to exclude every detail lacking direct proof, and the judge agreed in part. The medical and financial anomalies were gradually blurred by arguments that no clear causal link to the accident had been proven. Dr. Harlan was cross-examined. "Are you certain Mr. Collins administered the insulin, or is it just a hypothesis?" Dr. Harlan shook his head. "I'm speaking medically, not about who did it." Lang smirked. "So it's speculation, Your Honor." I wanted to stand and shout, but Mr. Riley held me back. "Stay calm, Andrew. This is their game." Before the panel, Mark maintained an eerily calm demeanor. He appeared impeccably each session. Sharp black suit, straight tie, groomed hair, controlling every gesture, portraying himself as a wronged husband patiently awaiting justice. He sat there, eyes fixed on the judge, voice steady in responses. "I love my wife, Your Honor. The accident is a tragedy, but I'm not involved. These accusations are just misunderstandings from her brother, who has always disliked me. He even shed fake tears once, dabbing them with a clean handkerchief." In contrast, I had to constantly suppress my rage, sitting silently as arguments dismissed every suspicion for lack of direct evidence. Each time Lang rebutted, it felt like a punch to the face. No video of injection? No witness? Then these accusations are worthless. My heart twisted, hands trembling under the table. My parents called daily from Greenwich, voices worried. "Son, how's the hearing going?" I tried to reassure them, but inside fear of failure grew. Through each hearing, the scales tipped toward Mark, and the likelihood of the case being dismissed became clearer. At the third hearing, the judge spoke calmly but decisively. "The court acknowledges the seriousness of the allegations. However, at this time, the plaintiff has not provided direct evidence sufficient to prove criminal conduct. Absent new developments, the court will consider dismissing the case." Mr. Riley stood, cautiously maintaining argument. "Your Honor, while direct evidence is lacking, the entire chain of events and timeline show a clear, systematic motive warranting further examination. Lawyer Lang immediately countered, "Your Honor, assumed motive cannot substitute for legal evidence. Without direct proof, continuing the case violates the presumption of innocence." I left that session reeling, rain pouring outside the Manhattan courthouse, soaking my coat. Our family fell into silent despair, realizing money and influence couldn't replace evidence in court. My father, who once acquired companies with a single call, was now powerless. "Son, the law is fair, but sometimes too rigid." My mother cried over the phone, "What will happen to her if he gets away?" I comforted her, but my heart was heavy. I felt helpless, facing the reality that truth, if not proven properly, might not hold up in court. I sat alone in a cafe near the courthouse, watching the rain fall, wondering why everything had turned out this way. The preliminary hearings replayed in my mind, the judge's gavel banging, Lawyer Lang's smirking smile, and Mark sitting there, calm as an innocent man. "Lack of direct evidence," they said. Lack of evidence? I had search history, insulin purchase receipts, mounting debts, but it was all just circumstantial. I clenched my fists under the table, nails digging into my skin. Why was the law so blind? Why was justice so slow? Lily was still in the hospital, deep in coma, and if we lost, Mark would walk free, continuing his fake life. I thought about calling my parents, telling them everything, but how could I? They were worried enough. I told myself to find another way, dig deeper with Jack. But deep down, the fear of failure gnawed at me like a hungry beast. While I was sunk in that deadlock, furious yet calculating how to handle possible defeat, my phone vibrated on the table. Lenox Hill Hospital number. My heart tightened. "Bad news?" I answered, and Nurse Sarah's voice came through, full of hope. "Mr. Andrew, Lily's awake. She opened her eyes half an hour ago, fully conscious. Come right away." I froze for a moment, then jumped up like electrocuted, knocking over my coffee cup. "My sister is awake?" I repeated, voice breaking. Sarah laughed. "Yes, the doctor's checking now." I leaped into the car and raced to Lenox Hill Hospital. On the way, relief and joy surged like a breaking wave. Lily was awake. After all those days in coma, all those nights I'd sat by her bed praying. I smiled to myself, tears mixing with rain on my face. "Little sister, I'm coming," I whispered. I rushed to the hospital, and when I pushed open the ICU door, I froze. Lily lay there, eyes open wide, looking at me with a weak smile. Machines still surrounded her, but she was alert, her hand moving slightly as if to reach me. She called my name weakly, voice hoarse but clear. I rushed over, taking her hand, tears streaming. "Lily, you're awake." You have no idea how worried I was. The joy choked me like lifting a boulder that had weighed on me for days. She responded to simple questions. "Do you have a headache? Do you remember anything?" Lily nodded weakly but couldn't speak clearly. I stayed by her side for a long time, asking gently, trying to hide my emotion upon realizing she was still weak but fully mentally alert. Dr. Harlan entered, checking quickly. "Miss Whitman has passed the most dangerous phase. Recovery will take time, but cognitive function and memory are unaffected. It's a miracle." I nodded, overflowing with gratitude. "Thank you, doctor." When he left, I immediately called my parents with the good news. "Mom, Dad, Lily's awake. She's okay. She recognized me." Mom burst into sobs over the phone. "Oh God, she's awake?" Dad's voice trembled. "Good, son. We'll come right away." I asked Dad to arrange protection, a private bodyguard from the family security firm, and to keep Lily's awakening confidential to avoid complications while things were still sensitive. "Don't let the press or anyone know, Dad. Mark might do something." Dad agreed. "I've handled it. Keep her safe." I breathed a sigh of relief, but worry lingered. Lily was awake, but the court case hung in the balance. My parents arrived at the hospital that afternoon right after my call. Mom nearly ran into the room, hugging Lily tightly, tears uncontrollable. "My baby girl's awake. I was so scared for you," she said through sobs. Dad stood by the bed, eyes red, holding Lily's hand firmly, voice low but shaking. My girl's strong. I knew you'd pull through. We sat together for a long time, sharing light family stories, keeping the atmosphere gentle and absolutely avoiding mention of Mark to prevent stressing Lily. By evening, the doctor advised rest. Before leaving, Dad pulled me into the hallway, hand on my shoulder, voice slow and firm. "Stay with her, son. We've got a bodyguard here now." Mom looked at me, eyes full of worry but trust. Then they left the hospital in heavy silence. In the first days after waking, Lily looked visibly exhausted. She barely spoke, unusually quiet, eyes often drifting away, reactions cold in a way I didn't understand. What was weighing on my sister? Each time I gently asked, "What are you thinking?" Lily just shook her head, saying shortly she was tired and needed rest. I didn't push, but the worry grew steadily. The doctor told me it was common after severe trauma and prolonged coma that Lily needed time for body and mind to adjust. I stayed at the hospital constantly, sleeping on the long hallway bench, tracking every smallest change. At night, watching Lily lie still under dim lights, I couldn't help wondering what she was hiding in that silence, and if there was pain, yet unspoken. A few days later, when Lily was stronger and could talk longer, sitting up to eat soup, smiling lightly, I began telling her everything that had happened during her coma. I sat by the bed, voice slow. "Lily, I found a lot about Mark. Debts, addictions, he used your assets for loans. And the accident, probably not random, abnormal insulin in your blood." I detailed it. Jack's report, the yacht, asset seizures, confrontations, the stalled trial. Lily listened quietly to the end. No reaction, no interruption. The prolonged silence made me even more worried, but I still got no explanation. Her eyes looked out the window, hands clutching the bedsheet. "Do you know about this?" I asked. Lily was silent for a long time, then sighed. "Have you finished telling me?" Only when Lily spoke up herself did she say it was time to end everything and she was ready to testify in court, even if it meant facing everything she'd tried to bury. "Andrew, I'll tell everything. I can't let him get away." Her voice was resolute, but eyes red. I was stunned, then overjoyed. "Are you sure? You've just woken up?" Lily nodded firmly. That decision filled me with joy. Finally, hope. Lily's direct testimony was the direct evidence we needed, mixed with fear for her mental endurance as she reopened her deepest wounds. Based on the new development, the final trial was reopened a week later, this time with Lily's direct appearance. Mr. Riley filed urgently. The court accepted due to new evidence. The courtroom was packed, atmosphere tense like a drawn string. When Lily entered, in a wheelchair, face pale but eyes determined, the air shifted immediately. Lily's appearance froze the entire courtroom. The judge paused, note-taking, murmurs rippling through the gallery. I sat in the family row, parents on either side. I felt Mom's hand gripping mine tightly, Dad sitting straight, eyes fixed on his daughter. On the other side, Mark sat at the defendant's table, face ashen. He couldn't hide his panic seeing Lily, eyes widening, breath quickening, hands trembling as if seeing something beyond control. He tried to say something but couldn't, and Lawyer Lang quickly leaned in to silence him. I sat motionless, heart pounding, both fearful and hopeful. In that moment, I knew not just me but our whole family was waiting for words that could change everything. Before the court, Lily testified that in the time before the accident, Mark directly managed all her health issues, from monitoring vitals, preparing medications, to insisting she follow what he called medical instructions. Her voice trembled slightly but clear. "He said I was weak, needed special care. He prepared drinks, supplements. I trusted him." The judge listened, taking notes. Lily stated she accidentally discovered on Mark's computer search history related to insulin and hypoglycemia, plus purchase receipts for medications and supplies mismatched with her health. "I found it strange because I don't have diabetes. I took photos, saved them to a private email. Sensing irregularity, Lily had quietly preserved these documents as self-protection, and after waking, handed them all to lawyers and investigators for verification, cross-referencing with medical records and accident timing before presenting in court. The evidence was presented one by one: screenshots, authenticated receipts, medical analysis, piecing together a clear picture, rendering prior denials untenable. Lang tried to object. "This is speculation," but Mr. Riley countered, "Direct evidence from the victim, Your Honor." Faced with authenticated physical evidence and Lily's direct, consistent testimony, Mark could no longer deny. He bowed his head, voice shaking. "I admit it. I just wanted to hide the debts. I didn't mean to kill her." He confessed to intentionally interfering with his wife's health to conceal the $5 million loan and unauthorized use of her assets. The courtroom fell dead silent. I gripped Mom's hand tighter. The court found Mark guilty of intentional severe harm endangering life, plus financial fraud, sentencing him to 28 years imprisonment without parole, while confiscating all related assets and permanently barring him from managing or using any property in Lily's name. The gavel banged and Mark was led away, face gray. Our family left the courtroom in silence, no complete sense of victory, just relief mixed with pain as the truth was finally exposed. Mom cried, "Darling, it's over now." Dad silently hugged us. I looked at Lily in her wheelchair. She smiled weakly. "It's done, bro." But I knew the wounds remained. We returned to the hospital together, beginning the healing journey. I stayed with Lily all night, telling funny stories to make her laugh. But deep down, I knew she was hiding something. The next morning, when my parents visited again, Lily hugged them. "I'm showing positive signs, Mom and Dad." We sat together, eating fruit, avoiding court talk. But anticipation lingered. Would Lily tell everything? I waited, heart full of hope and anxiety. A miracle had happened, but the road was still long. After the trial, everything seemed to close. But in reality, it was only the beginning of a new chapter full of pain. Lily was brought home to live with our parents in Greenwich for easier care. Dr. Harlan advised close monitoring for at least a few months, as her body remained weak after the coma and accident. We hired a private nurse, turning Lily's old room into a small medical area with monitors and medications. The large house in Greenwich, where we grew up with afternoons playing in the garden, now felt quieter than ever, but the atmosphere was heavy in a different way. No more laughter echoing from the kitchen when Mom baked. No more lively debates about football with Dad. Instead, a stifling silence, as if everyone was trying to breathe under a thick fog. At every meal, we sat around the table making small talk about the weather or work. But everyone's eyes turned to Lily, waiting for some sign. Each time I visited, usually weekends from Boston or midweek if work allowed, I noticed Lily becoming unusually quiet. She sat by the window gazing at the garden Mom tended, eyes often fixed on a distant point as if trying to stay awake rather than truly living again after the ordeal. Lily was no longer the sister who always smiled, who painted vibrant, colorful pictures. She ate sparingly, answered questions briefly, and sometimes I saw her hands tremble slightly holding a glass of water. "I'm fine, bro," she said whenever I asked, but her voice lacked life. My parents noticed the change soon, too. One evening after Lily had gone to rest, Mom pulled me into the kitchen, lowering her voice as if afraid she'd overhear. She said, "Son, Lily isn't the same anymore. She's not just recovering from the accident. It's like she's carrying unspoken pain." Dad sat at the table, quietly lighting a cigar, an old habit when worried. He took a deep drag, then spoke slowly. "You're right, Andrew. She avoids mentioning Mark, avoids talking about the accident. But her eyes..." He paused. "Her eyes have no life left." I stood between them, listening to every word, and for the first time since it all happened, I realized this worry wasn't mine alone. The whole family felt something deeply wrong with Lily. Their words made me increasingly uneasy, even though everything outside had closed. Mark in prison, assets seized, justice served. But why was Lily still like a ghost? I wondered if I'd missed something, if the accident had left deeper psychological wounds than we thought. Nights back in Boston, I lay sleepless, mind reeling with images of Lily sitting alone, eyes vacant. Unable to stay silent, I pressed her multiple times. The first in the garden, sitting on the swing. "Little sister, what are you hiding from me? Tell me." Lily looked away, voice weary. "Nothing, bro. I'm tired, need time." The second in the kitchen while Mom was shopping. "Lily, I see you're not happy. Because of Mark? Or the accident?" She shook her head. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." Each time I worried more, feeling like facing an invisible wall. I remembered old times. Lily used to tell me everything from school crushes to work worries. Why so closed now? I blame myself, perhaps too busy, not there enough. But I didn't stop, continuing visits, bringing flowers, books, trying to spark a smile. One day, autumn chill in Greenwich, golden leaves covering the garden, I sat beside Lily on the living room sofa, holding her hand longer than usual. "I love you so much. Whatever it is, tell me." Lily looked at me, eyes glistening, then suddenly burst into sobs. The pent-up emotions finally broke like a dam, sobs echoing in the quiet house. I held her tightly, heart racing. "Cry it out. You'll feel better. I'll listen." Lily cried for a long time, shoulders shaking, tears soaking my shirt. Then, through tears, she revealed she had been pregnant, and the accident had taken the unborn child, a pain she'd buried all this time. I was 3 months pregnant, but the accident took the baby, bro. Her voice broke, hand gripping mine tightly. I froze, thunderstruck. Pregnant? The child? How didn't I know? I kept it secret to surprise Mark. I thought it would be okay. What broke her most wasn't just losing the child, but realizing the one indirectly responsible for its death was its father, the man she'd trusted absolutely. She said through tears, "He caused the accident to hide debts, but in the end he took our child's life." Lily sobbed, detailing. She'd suspected Mark for a while but loved him, tried to save the marriage for the baby. I thought a child would change him. Lily said that in the hospital, doctors told her the truth right after waking, but she'd suppressed the grief, deciding to testify not just for herself, but for the lost child. I wanted him to pay, so our baby didn't die in vain. Her words cut like knives into my heart. I was stunned, numb from what I'd heard, pain and guilt surging as I realized my sister's strength was built on such immense loss. Why hadn't I seen it? Why hadn't I asked sooner? I held Lily, crying with her. "I'm sorry, little sister. I didn't know." When my parents returned and saw us crying, they worried. "What's wrong?" I recounted it, voice faltering. When they learned the truth, both couldn't hold back tears. Mom knelt, hugging Lily. "My grandchild, I didn't know you endured such pain alone." She sobbed, grief for the grandchild mixing with anguish for her daughter's silent suffering. Dad slumped into a chair, face pale, silent long before speaking, voice hoarse and trembling. "How did you bear this alone, daughter?" The room sank into heavy silence. We sat close, no more words, just holding each other, crying as if tears could wash away some of the crushing pain. By evening, no one had appetite. We just sat, sharing fragmented stories, recalling old memories, comforting each other in the clumsiest family way. I bowed my head, voice choked. "I'm sorry. If I'd been tougher on Mark from the start, if I'd been there more for you, maybe." Lily shook her head, wiping my tears, voice weak but firm. "Stop blaming yourself, bro. It's not your fault. It's mine. For blind love, marrying him. Anyway, it's over." Those words didn't erase the pain, but enough for me to understand that in this moment, all we could do was stay together. A few weeks later, when Lily was a bit stronger, starting to walk, painting again, I decided to visit Mark in prison, carrying everything Lily had never said. I drove to the federal prison in New York, heart heavy. Procedures long, but I was patient. Mark sat behind thick glass in baggy prison uniform, his face much gaunter, but seeing me, he clung to final arrogance. He spoke, voice hoarse and bitter. "Andrew, What are you here for? To gloat seeing me like this? He leaned back, arms crossed defensively. I'm not the bad guy. I didn't try to kill Lily. It all happened because I was cornered. Debt's pressure. It all forced me. I looked at him, voice cold and resolute. I'm not here for your sob story. Do you know how broken Lily is, Mark? He froze, eyes flickering momentarily, then quickly spoke as if afraid of being cornered, voice lowering noticeably. It hurts me too, Andrew. I've lost everything. What's left in this life for me? I looked at him unmoved, cutting in word by word, voice cold and resolute. Don't say it hurts you. You have no right to that word after what you've done. My voice lowered, each word slow and heavy. You weren't there when my sister woke screaming at night. You didn't see her staring at the ceiling for hours, unable to cry or speak. You don't know what it's like pretending to be normal while shattered inside. He fell silent, eyes shifting. I continued, no louder but no escape. You call that love? Love letting her bear all consequences alone while you hide behind circumstances? I paused a beat, staring straight. Mark, do you know you indirectly killed your own child? He froze solid. What did you just say? Voice trembling. You said Lily was pregnant? I didn't look away. Lily was carrying your child, and the accident you caused took that baby's life. Mark leaped up, metal chair crashing behind. He lunged at the glass, eyes panicked, fixed on me, searching for any sign of lie to cling to. You're lying, right? He stammered. You're just scaring me, aren't you? I remained silent. That silence made him realize. His eyes changed from panic to complete collapse. Say something, tell me. Voice breaking. Lily was really pregnant? Hands pounding the glass, breath ragged, voice roaring in desperation. No, I didn't know. If I'd known, I wouldn't have done it. I swear I didn't know. I looked at him one final second, then slowly stood. I said nothing more. Behind me, Mark's screams rose fierce, panicked and shattered, but I didn't turn back. He understood, and that truth would haunt him the rest of his life. That was the heaviest punishment. On the way home, I cried alone, thinking of the unborn grandchild, but also relieved, everything exposed. Lily waited at home and we would heal together. The road was long, but family was our support. In the months that followed, I returned to the familiar rhythm of work. As CEO of the investment fund in Boston, deals and responsibilities continued to sweep me along like an unending river. Long meetings, million-dollar decisions, red-eye flights, all resumed as if never interrupted. But this time was different. I no longer let them consume me. I actively adjusted my pace, refusing to trade family for busyness. Each week I proactively canceled non-essential meetings, turned off my phone earlier than usual, and drove to Greenwich. Not out of obligation, but because I had realized that work was just work, while family was irreplaceable. Life was no longer an endless race. It was the balance I had neglected for too long. I spent more time visiting Lily, no longer as protector or guide, but simply as a brother there when she needed. Trips to Greenwich became frequent, sometimes just to sit beside her in the garden, silently watching leaves fall. Lily was now stronger, able to walk without crutches, but the scar on her arm and the pain in her heart remained. I didn't push her to talk, didn't try to fix everything as before. Instead, I listened, truly listened. I took Lily to a psychologist, patiently accompanying her through sessions, understanding that her trauma couldn't vanish just because justice had been served. I found the best specialist in New York, Dr. Elena, an expert in post-accident psychological trauma and loss. In early sessions, Lily cried a lot, talking about Mark, the lost child, the fear upon realizing her love was an illusion. Dr. Elena listened, guiding her to breathe deeply, keep a journal. I sat in the waiting room, heart tightening each time sobs echoed out. But I was patient, driving her to and from, sitting beside her on the way home, asking, "How do you feel today?" Lily gradually opened up. "It hurts a lot, but after the session I feel lighter." I understood. Wounds don't heal overnight. They fade like scars over time. Each therapy session was a small step, and I was there, not giving up. I remembered once after a session, Lily said, "Thank you for not pushing me." That was when I knew I was doing it right. Little by little, Lily began recovering. Long silences shortened. Smiles appeared more often, not forced but natural. At first, she sat alone for hours, but then she started rising early, making coffee for everyone, joking with Mom about old recipes. "Mom, I miss your apple pie. Let's make it together," Lily said one morning. And Mom cried because Lily was opening up more. Her smile, genuine, not pretended, warmed my heart. I saw my sister returning piece by piece. She rediscovered small joys once lost, from tending garden plants, watering roses, pruning branches, to painting in quiet afternoons. Lily sat by the window, brush gliding on paper, creating pictures of the sea, family, the unborn child as an angel. And then she dared talk about the future without avoiding. "Bro, I want to get back to art, maybe open a small studio." Those words filled me with joy, like seeing light at the tunnel's end. Recovery wasn't sudden magic, it was slow steps, and Lily was taking them. Seeing their daughter stabilizing, my parents felt relieved too. They no longer lived in constant worry, learning to accept that healing is a long journey requiring patience. Mom smiled more, baking for Lily every weekend, sharing old stories to cheer the house. Dad, the tough man, grew gentler, hugging his daughter each morning, saying, "My girl's so strong now." They joined family therapy a few times, learning to listen without judgment. "We almost lost her," Dad said one evening, voice low. "Now we must cherish every moment together." I saw my parents change, no longer over-worrying but trusting the process. Dinners grew warmer with laughter and stories. But we still remembered the grandchild. A drawing by Lily hung in the living room, a gentle reminder. Healing doesn't erase pain. It helps us live with it. One afternoon, I stood quietly on the porch watching Lily bent over flower beds in the garden. She carefully tended soil around young plants, hands dirty but movements slow and patient. Late-day sunlight fell on her face, highlighting thin sweat beads on her forehead, glistening like real signs of life. Lily wiped sweat with her hand, exhaled lightly, then smiled to herself. A smile no longer forced. Seeing that, memories flooded back. The ungiven birthday gift, cold hospital hallways, quiet investigations, tense courtroom, irreparable pain of the lost baby. My heart tightened, but this time not just pain. Gratitude that Lily was here, touching soil, sunlight, life. I suddenly understood family isn't a place for control or silent sacrifice, but where each person is protected, heard, and allowed to speak when something feels wrong. We'd once chosen silence over Mark's red flags, thinking it tolerance, respect. Now I knew that silence nearly took Lily forever. I stood there, watching my sister continue planting, and vowed to myself, from now on I'd listen more, ask when uneasy, act without waiting for collapse, not from fear of loss, but understanding the true value of protecting loved ones. Looking back on the journey, I'd learned justice can come late, but truth always needs someone patient and brave enough to pursue it to the end. I, once thinking I controlled everything with numbers and strategy, now knew life isn't a balance sheet. It's relationships, wounds, and strength to overcome. The story closes as I realize the past can't be erased, but we always choose how to live after. Not by forgetting, but by being wiser, kinder, and refusing to let old tragedies repeat through silence or avoidance. I'd once thought protecting family meant bearing everything alone, but now I knew it also means daring to listen, ask questions, and act when something's wrong. Lily ran toward me from the garden, face sweaty but eyes bright and calm. She hugged me tightly, voice soft but clear. "Bro, without you, I might not have had the strength to wake up, face it, and move on. Thank you for being there even when I couldn't speak." I hugged her back, feeling that familiar breath I'd nearly lost forever, then said slowly, "No, Lily. I just did what a brother should. You're the strongest here. You survived, stood up. That matters most. We stood there under fading afternoon light, no more words needed. In that moment, I knew we'd be okay. Not because all wounds healed, but because we'd learned to live with them, turning scars into marks of growth, not pain dictating the future. Life began anew from there, not perfect, but strong enough to continue. 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 Continue.